Welcome back to the Big Muddy Dance Company's official podcast, Dance Chatter. Thanks so much for joining us today. You are going to hear an interview that I had with one of our guest artists this season, Bradley Shelver, who needs no introduction in the dance community. But for those of you who are not familiar, this is a brief peek at some of his incredible accomplishments. Bradley Shelver is a South African-born dancer, teacher, and choreographer who trained at the National School of the Arts in Johannesburg and at the Ailey School in New York. He has danced with some incredible companies such as Ailey 2, Complexions Contemporary Ballet, Ballet Hispanico, the Limon Dance Company, among many others. He is in his 13th season as a principal dancer with the Metropolitan Opera Ballet. He is currently the artistic director of the Joffrey Concert Group in New York City. He is company teacher for Matthew Bourne's Adventures in Motion Pictures, The Lion King on Broadway, the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and Eliza Monte Dance, and has choreographed on companies all over the world, now to include the Big Muddy. Mr. Shelver is on the faculty of schools and universities worldwide as a certified ballet teacher with the ABT National Training Curriculum, and his book, Performance Through the Dance Technique of Lester Horton, is available worldwide. You can see Bradley's full bio on our website at thebigmuddydanceco.org, and I really hope you enjoy this insightful look at his process with the company to create his upcoming premiere work, PlayFolk. Thanks so much for joining us. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Dance Chatter, the Big Muddy Dance Company's podcast. I'm Erin Prange, Executive Director, and I am here with our first guest artist of the 23-24 Becoming season, Bradley Shelver. Welcome, Bradley.
Hello, everyone.
So I am thrilled that you're here, and this is actually your second to last day with us in St. Louis, working with the company, and so I would love to know, how's it been going?
Really good. It's I gave them a beast of a work.
Yes.
It's 21 minutes of, pure unadulterated movement.
Yes. I see them sweating and huffing and puffing
yes.
at the end of rehearsal, yeah.
And cursing under their breaths.
Right.
Yes. I set out to sort of create a journey for them too. I very much I feel like I am a audience choreographer. I create for an audience, I create for an experience. But obviously before I get there, the dancers have to have that experience. They have to have that, tangible thing that they can latch onto.
Yes.
So that the audience can focus in on that. And that's kind of what I wanted to create with this work. I'm calling it PlayFolk.
I love that.
And it's kind of the experience I would like for us to share more as humans than all the other stuff. I see a lot of contemporary dance, and it's a lot of the time it's very angst-ridden, and everyone's going through something, and everyone's suffering, and everyone is, there's enough of that in the world.
Right.
I wanted to create a piece that sort of celebrates, there's little hints of those dark moments in there.
Sure.
But it's mainly just a group of people who are enjoying being together in a space, laughing at each other, suffering with each other, sweating with each other, everything that kind of, we experience when we're kids and we're playing. It's not, right. It has nothing to do with who you are, what you look like, how much money you make, what your political or religious beliefs are. You put one kid and another kid in a sandbox and they will figure out a way to enjoy each other's company within that sandbox.
They're in the same space.
The problem is when the parents take them out of the sandbox,
right.
That's sometimes where things can fall apart. So I basically wanted to create a sandbox.
I love that. It's such a great sense of belonging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, I'm honored to be, the first guest choreographer for this season, also because there's quite a few new dancers.
There are. We have 6 new dancers this season.
And this is definitely a crash course in bonding, I think.
That's great. I love that.
Yeah, play, the title, play and folk, there's so many layers and nuances to that. You know, people play in different ways. You know, there's games in different ways. You know, I touch a little bit on, you know, relationships and sort of the games we play in relationships. If we're into someone, and if we're not into someone, and if we're not quite sure if we're into someone.
Yeah.
You know, so there's a lot of those kind of layers. There's, you know, there's a very poignant duet in there. The music is I Thought of You Last Night by Jerry Southern.
Love that.
And it has a little bit of a hint of, you know, stalking, a little bit in there. But
Mind games.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
You know, but then also throughout with the little interactions that dancers have with each other, there's a little bit of teasing and a little bit of, you know, all of those things that we kind of consciously or subconsciously experience during the course of our adulthood and even childhood.
Sure.
You know, it's a little different when we're children because we don't quite know the concept of manipulation just yet.
Right.
I mean, we get to a certain age when we do, because you know how to manipulate your mother, you know how to manipulate your father.
We learn that quickly.
Exactly. And then, you know, but as we progress as adults, you know, that can turn in either a playful, fun way, or it can turn into kind of a dark, narcissistic kind of way. You know, and in this piece, I try to encompass all of those different depths of
different pathways.
And it's all play, you know,
Yeah.
it's all, and,
oh, absolutely.
And the folk part of it, you know, representing, you know, different, you know, it's a very rich tapestry musically that I've selected.
Yes.
And, you know, I'm inspired a little bit by like folk dancing and folk tales and all of that, because that is also, you know, mankind's way of passing on traditions and experiencing joy. I mean, we dance at a wedding. Why? Because everybody wants to celebrate a new love.
Yes.
You know, some cultures dance at funerals and you know, bat mitzvahs and like you name it. So culturally around the world, there is that expression of folk music and folk dance. So that's kind of what the inspiration was for this work.
I love that. I think it was exactly the right way and the right tone for us to start off our season in the studio. Tell me what do you notice is similar or different between this piece and some of your other works, if you look at it in its entirety, all of your repertoire?
Well, I consider myself, I'm very much a believer in versatility. You know, I come from a very strong ballet background, but I've danced with the Limon Company and Ailey 2 and Complexions and Ballet Hispanic. You know, so my work, I feel like, is very much influenced or responds to the diversity that exists in the world culturally, but also the diversity that exists in the world, in the dance world as well. You know, I love ballet trained dancers. I love technique, but I love seeing them letting that go at a certain point.
Right. You have to build it to tear it down.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's kind of, you know, I think looking at this piece, you know, my work, I always gravitate to the theme of community in some way or another. And I think this work is an extension of that kind of feeling. You know, I love working with big groups. You know, the more dancers, the merrier. That's why I chose to do a full company piece.
Love that. Yep.
I love what each dancer brings to the role or the work or the stage or the interactions that is uniquely theirs. And that's also what's really beautiful about Big Muddy is that, you know, there is this kind of... everyone is so special in their own way, and even if they don't know it yet, I'm hoping that through the course of working with me or through the course of dancing or living in this work, that they start to discover that individuality and that it's really their superpower.
Yeah.
And that's been particularly interesting watching the new dancers who are also still navigating how they fit into the energy of the company. Seeing everybody on the same playing field struggling to get through the fifth section.
Yeah.
And how
We're
that
all
kind
in
of
this together,
exactly.
yeah.
and that to me is a really beautiful a really beautiful thing that I think, you know, as human beings we tend to lose sight of a lot. Like, you know, we're all going through something, and but we all share the fact that we're all going through something.
Right.
And I think across the board, that's kind of what I like to investigate in my works. You know, how we are connected, even if we are apart, even if we're on opposite sides of the stage, we're connected on opposite sides of the telephone, opposite sides of the world. Especially after COVID, that was such a thing, because even though we were so separated, I also felt super connected to people that I maybe lost some connection with before, because
I did too,
you're
because
on
of
Zoom.
geography.
Exactly.
What's Zoom? We didn't
Exactly.
even know, 4 years ago.
Exactly.
Isn't that wild?
And I mean, I was teaching dancers in, Australia and Russia and, the United Kingdom and, South Africa. And it was just like, all of a sudden again, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what we've lost sight of.
We forgot that we are all on the same planet and that we could potentially have a common experience.
And how tiny that tip can go. Like,
Right.
it took one incident
Yes.
in Asia.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, the whole world,
Yeah.
the ripple effects are crazy. And
We
it kind
are
of makes you
all
realize your
affected.
insignificance
Yep.
and your significance.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree. I love that. So tell me, let's let everyone know what you're doing now in your other life, in your home life after this residency, and kind of what you see for yourself in the next year or so.
I mean, this will be my second season as the artistic director of the Joffrey Concert Group. The company, or the organization, has been around since 1953. The Joffrey Concert Group has been around since 1981. We are the we're the original New York school.
Yeah.
And, I am loving working with these, young, hungry, super versatile dancers in New York. Just to have the space and the history, and also, trying to manage those things and take them forward into what the global dance world looks like now is both daunting and super exciting for me.
Sure.
Our dancers are, we have a ballet trainee program, and we have a jazz and contemporary trainee program, and then the concert group is kind of the melting pot of both of those things, which is right up my alley, as I mentioned before, because I love creating, contemporary ballet works, and then, contemporary modern works, and I love the challenge for myself, and I love the challenge for the dancers to realize what their full potentials are, and not to pigeonhole themselves.
Right.
So my career kind of, I feel like, I have to practice what I preach. So, I still perform myself with the Metropolitan Opera Ballet. I've been there 15 years, 15 seasons now.
Wow.
I teach, I'm an adjunct professor at Montclair State University in the ballet department. Obviously, I teach at the Joffrey Ballet School. I'm teaching at the Graham School as well. And I've been on faculty at the Elvin Ailey School for the last 24 years.
You are at the front of the room quite a bit these days.
Yeah, and it's kind of nice. I didn't think that I would, every dancer gets to a point in their career when they are like, wow, what am I going to do now?
What's next?
And I always knew that I wanted a full and generous career in terms of the experiences. But I always knew that I wanted to be an artistic director. I wanted to be a choreographer. I wanted to, guide young dancers to help them find their full potential. And I can honestly say, all my dreams have come true at
That's
this
amazing.
stage.
Wow.
Which,
I don't hear that very often.
Trying not to get emotional about it, but sometimes, you think about, all the sacrifices that we have to make as artists, which, especially unfortunately in the United States is a plethora of those.
A lot, yes.
Because we're not necessarily as supported and as appreciated in this country as they are in Europe. Maybe because, the United States is a younger country.
Right.
And sometimes the priorities can shift a little bit. And so, coming originally from South Africa, and the sacrifices I had to make there, leaving my family and coming to this country all by myself.
Right.
And having to work myself, especially in New York City, through the ranks of having to prove myself, sitting here on this podcast, I'm like, wow, like every single one of my dreams have come true.
That's incredible.
And
congratulations.
Thank you. I mean, there's more dreams.
Sure, of
you don't
course.
stop dreaming.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
I just want that for everyone.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
Oh, and I wrote a book.
And you wrote a book.
I wrote a book called Performance Through the Dance Technique of Lester Horton. I'm also a Master Horton teacher.
Right, and you taught a workshop while you were here.
I did for the teaching artists at COCA.
Yep.
And I love that too. I love helping other teaching artists find their voice and maintain and helping them to maintain the integrity of a codified technique, so that we can pass it forward to the next generation, but also understand that there is this development that needs to happen because bodies are changing and dance psychology is changing, and the expectations of professional dancers are shifting constantly. And I love the challenge of giving them. You have all this plethora of information that you can choose from, but don't get stuck in that. Like, what can you do with this?
Right.
Because you have this dancer that is super hyperextended, or you have this dancer with bow legs, and you can't fit everybody into this little cookie cutter situation.
Yes.
Use your experience as a teaching artist to create the new way of thinking about this technique or dance. So I'm loving that part of my experiences as well.
Yes. I love that you are teaching teachers. I mean, that's so generous in spirit. And you also have a relentless dedication to the authenticity of the art form, which is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. So you mentioned this earlier, this global dance arena. Having had so much of your dance career in the States and looking at the global dance arena, and also knowing where you have come from growing up, what do you see for the U.S. on this platform, and where would you want that to go? I mean, what do you want to see for, let's say, your company in terms of what you see abroad?
I think in Europe, because, as I mentioned before, the arts is way better funded than it is here. There is room for risk taking, and there's room for failure. And I'm a firm believer, and I teach this to my students too. You have to allow yourself to fall, because the more you fall, the more you know how to recover. In this country, there's very little space for you to take some risks sometimes, because there is an outcome that needs to achieve. There is a grant that you have to apply for. There is, you have to put butts in seats.
Got to hit those numbers.
You got to hit those numbers.
Yep.
And that puts a lot of pressure on the choreographer and on the institution, and also on the dancer down the line. Where that is a huge draw is that, in Europe, American dancers are quite prized, because we have figured out that the hustle exists.
Yes.
And the work needs to happen, and that I have a very short amount of time to get this step and to get this together, because that's just the nature of what I grew up in this country. So, what I would love to see, the future of dance in this country, is I would love to see there more space and more opportunities for risks to be taken.
Right.
I understand that there's always a fine line between art and commercial approach.
Sure.
Again, if the audience is not enjoying a work, they're not going to come back and see the work again.
Right.
And in Europe, I feel like that's not necessarily the focus of it, because it's like, well, this is art. You can accept it or you cannot accept it. I would rather you love it or hate it, but if there's that in between, then I feel like at least for me as an artist or a choreographer, I feel like then I've failed.
Right. You want to evoke a strong emotion in one way or another.
And stimulate a strong emotion.
Right.
You know, and that's my thing. Like, especially in this piece, there's a lot to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And there hopefully is something for everyone, or it might just be you sit there and you're like, whoa, I have no idea, there's so much coming at me.
Mm-hmm.
I feel anxiety. I'm like, good.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes that is part of the playing part of it. You know, you are in a situation that you're supposed to be having a good time in, but you're not, because you're anxiety ridden. Like at a party, if you suffer from social anxiety,
right?
You know, it's and I suffer from anxiety, and I've had to learn how to manage that and digest it through my art. So why not have the audience experience a little bit of what it is that we as artists go through as well?
Sure.
And we as arts administrators go through too.
Right.
Because there's what's happening on stage, but then there's also that, like, oh my God, are we going to sell tickets? And are we, touching this demographic? And there's all of that going on as well.
Yep.
Which is very much, not saying that this doesn't exist on a global scale, but it's very much an American capitalist approach.
Yep.
And you can't pretend like it doesn't exist.
Sure.
You have to embrace it.
Sure.
And there's unfortunately very little room for failure.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I would love to see this country just being more generous towards its artists.
Mm-hmm.
Like we are really what defines a culture.
Yeah.
You go to Italy, and what's the first thing you do? You go to the museums and go and see the architecture. The same in Paris. The same in the Netherlands. There's, you go to Israel, and there's the historical significance, the religious significance, but also the artistic, because all of those things are represented by the arts
through art
around you.
Yes.
In this country, that's not what we necessarily define our success by. We are defining our success by the size of our armies, or the size of the money that we're giving to corporate environments. And that's not really what the world is going to remember down the line. They're going to remember the beauty that they saw at the opera or in the museum, or
absolutely,
anywhere out, the music that you hear. And I wish that would be more of the focus.
And we talk about economic drivers. Arts can do that better than anything else.
What did we all do during COVID? We sat there and watched movies and read books and built puzzles that was created and painted by somebody.
Exactly.
You like everything.
We decorated our homes.
Exactly.
We did, designed kitchens and outdoor patios. And it's all artistic.
Yeah.
All of it. Yeah. It's pretty incredible. So one last question for you. I want to, looking forward, especially since you are such a teacher and care so much about what is happening with the next generation. Coming from your dance background, what advice or nugget of truth would you have to give to this new generation of dancers that is coming into a new era post-pandemic, but also in the midst of a lot of change in the dance world, stylistically and politically and everything else?
I think a lot of it comes down to try not to be so sensitive. Not everything is about you. Not everything is about, like, even for me, when I go into the space and I'm creating with a group of dancers, it's not about me. I said to the dancers today after our full run through, I'm like, the piece is now yours. Like, I can give you guide of where I want you to go, but when it comes down to it, it's yours now. And you've got to treat it with the respect that I gave it to you, but I also want you to run with it, because even then it's not about you, it's about the experience the audience is having. And then it's about the experience of the person that's next to you on stage. You are 100% responsible for their experience, and they're 100% responsible for yours.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I'm a firm believer in no relationship is 50-50. I'm 100% responsible for my happiness and your happiness. And guess what? You are 100% responsible for your happiness and my happiness.
Wow.
You can have the experience that you want to have. It's not always going to be what you thought it was going to be, but you could still come out of it with the experience that you want it to be.
Sure.
You know, and I really try and live, you know, my life in those terms as well. And I'm noticing with the young generation coming up is that it's this feeling of like, well, no, you are responsible for teaching me. I'm like, no, you are responsible for learning.
Yes.
That's the reality of it.
Yes.
It's not my job to inspire you. It's your job to inspire me. And then if I have that same feeling, oh, it's my job to inspire, guess what? 100%. If we're both responsible for inspiring each other, that's where beauty comes from.
That's the magic right there.
You can't stand back and wait for it to happen to you.
Right.
You have to be a part of that process.
Yes.
You know, and speaking up and being involved in the process is one thing, but there's also understanding that sometimes that person needs to have their process as well. You know, we all want to be heard, but in the process of everybody wanting to be heard, everybody's speaking over and yelling over each other, and everybody is trying to one up. Sometimes it's okay, and I was trained that way. You know, I was always trained like dancers and kids should be seen and not heard.
Right.
You know, it's a little different now.
Yeah.
But the way that you can be seen is not demanding that you be seen, but it's making an impact in a way that I can't miss you.
Yes.
Like, don't force yourself, don't force me to have my attention. Do something profound that is going to all of a sudden track my eye to you and be like, wait, what's your name? Like, what? I think that is a beautiful experience, because then you are leading by example.
Right.
You are leading by who you are deep down inside, as opposed to saying, who, you know, accept me because I am different. No, just be different. That's beautiful.
Absolutely. Be yourself.
Be yourself 100% authentically all the time, and then you're either gonna gravitate. Somebody's either gonna gravitate to you or they're not.
Right.
The reality of it is, you may pick dance, but it also has to pick you.
Sure.
You can't force that, because if you force that and it doesn't pick you, you're gonna get hurt.
Yes.
You're gonna have that expectation that's not gonna be fulfilled.
Right.
But if you are authentically, passionately, wonderfully consumed by who you are in this space and what it is that you can contribute, there's a much higher rate of the fact that dance will also pick you.
I love that. Is that in your book? No.
Should be.
That's just coming straight from the horse's mouth. Oh, I love that so much. Well, I think we're going to end on that note, because that's a really good one. I am so grateful to you for not just your work, but for your generosity with the dancers, and for starting us off on a really good note this season. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again for joining us, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that interview, and I hope you will check back with us at the Dance Chatter podcast, wherever you find your podcasts, iTunes, Spotify, or on our website, thebigmuddydanceco.org. You can check out all of our episodes from the past, as well as find tickets available for our upcoming production of Awakening, which kicks off our season in 23-24, called Becoming. Hope you can join us, and we'll see you next time.